Hello and welcome to Politics War Room with James Carville, and I'm Al Hunt. Thank you for joining us. This week, I want you to listen carefully. We are joined by legendary actress and activist Jane Fonda. And remember, we take your questions each episode, so write into politicswarroom@gmail.com or send a tweet to @Politicon for next week's show. We'll get as many as we can, and don't forget to tell us where you're from. The episode is sponsored today by GAINFUL and IPVANISH. Check out the links to our sponsors in the show notes, and we thank you for supporting our sponsors. It really helps to make this podcast happen. Please tell your friends about us and remind them to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcast. Hey, James, a lot to talk about. Let's get the ugly over first. Trump acquitted by the Senate, but not by history. He's dropping in the polls. He's off Twitter. He's down like a caged animal in Mar-a-Lago. However, much of the Republican Party is still a Trump party. Those 17 Republicans who voted to impeach or convict him, most of them have been censored by their own state or local party, including in Louisiana. And the grassroots of the Republican Party are Trumpites. The majority of House Republicans are Trumpites. Some senators and governors like Ron DeSantis. So we agree. He's a blowhard. He's a bully. Thank God he's gone. And his influence is certainly waning in the country, but not in the party. He still scares a lot of these Republicans, including at least half of those 43 Senate Republicans who voted to acquit him last week. So, he won't go away quite yet.
Yeah, but he's diminished. Okay, they went from 1 vote to 7. All right, they had 11 in the House. They had none before. I mean, you're right. The reaction has not been consummate what we think, and most or any sensible person would think is consummate to the offenses. But the idea that they have just skated through this without consequence it just doesn't hold up. They've had some consequence, not nearly enough. I mean, the Mitch McConnell statement was really, really put them in a bad place. So on the whole, they got away with I think a lighter sentence than deserved, but they didn't get away scot-free.
Yeah, I agree. I think his influence in the country among independent-minded voters, even some Democrats, few who had a soft spot, is gone. And I think he's peeled off some Republicans have peeled off too. But he is a hateful demagogue who can rouse that base, and he still scares a lot of those Republicans. It's outrageous. Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, James, can you believe, said this really wasn't an armed assault. Now, Ron Johnson, I don't think has an IQ of room temperature, but not to call it an armed assault?
Yeah, I'm afraid he probably does. And, you'll read the story about the party chair in Fonda, Wisconsin, that ran out of the party because he said Biden won the election. Look, I think Ron Johnson is smart enough to read where his party is, and particularly in Wisconsin, unfortunately, that's where they are. And whilst I agree with the view that they don't suffer nearly enough for the horror that abject horror that they brought on this country, they're suffering some. There's some penalty here, and I think that the best strategy is to just keep it coming.
Yeah,
keep it coming, and I think this 1/6 commission is a good idea, and that's going to keep this story alive for a long time to come.
Well, I'm certainly all for a commission. I would worry about, it has to be bipartisan, obviously. There are lots of Republicans who would be very good on that commission, and Mitch Daniels, a Fran Townsend, and Tom Ridge. But I'm afraid that's not the kind of people that a McCarthy or a McConnell will appoint. And I hope it could have the decorum and the seriousness of purpose of the 9/11 Commission. That'll be a challenge, but it certainly has to be done.
So a friend of mine came with this idea, which I think is worthy, is the chairman or the co-chairman should be Senator Doug Jones. I think he'd be perfect for that.
I think he'd be great for that.
This is an idea, just an idea to throw out there.
I mean, the only thing that might interfere with that is he ought to get a top level job with this administration too. So
he should, but I think this would be a role that would be very public and very consummate with his experience and skill set. As we saw last week when he was on the show, and by the way, I'm happy to announce that the concurrence of the producers of the show and you, our co-host at Senator Jones, is now officially our relief pitcher. So if we ever have to take time off, he'll pinch hit for one of the two of us, which is something he's very excited about, and I share that you and I are all very excited about that prospect also.
James, there are going to be listeners out there who hope we get bombed in the first inning. So I'm worried about that a little bit.
Right.
No,
so we're big Doug Jones people, but I think he would be that'd be many places he can serve his country. That would certainly be one.
I couldn't agree more. You know, there is I forget his name now. He's a top producer at 60 Minutes, who's got a book coming out saying that Steve Bannon tried to persuade people that Trump had dementia. Now, I don't think that's crazy. I'm not sure it's true, but I think there was certainly slippage that one could see.
I think it's hatefulness, but it could, sometimes hateful people get dementia. So I can't exclude it.
Right.
All right.
If he has it, he was hateful before he had it.
Right. It didn't. I don't see any great personality change in him.
No.
I mean, came in, all of his life, he's been a massive asshole, and he still is.
There's a great irony here. Not irony, but if you're a Democrat, you hate him, you want him to disappear from the scene, but you really privately don't mind what he's doing to the Republican Party, particularly in places where you're going to run against him. And if you're a never Trumper, James, as I think maybe the most pressing of that group, Bill Kristol, put it, you really are hoping for a reasonably successful Biden presidency. Because if it should be a failure, it threatens to bring back that whole Trump hate division that dominates the Republican Party.
We don't know the size of this massive bet that Biden is making, but Biden is making a bet that in a time where we're running pretty high deficits, that we're going to ramp it up to levels that we have never seen before,
right.
And that this will not produce inflation, and this will produce stronger and equitable economic growth, that this relief, don't call it stimulus, as we're constantly told, which is true, and this relief, and if this works, the payoff is going to be huge. However, I would caution people, if it doesn't work, if it produces, 1979, 1980 all over again, the consequences are going to be just awful for the country and the world. So everybody has and this is an experiment, right? We haven't done anything like this before. And I'm for it. The Jerome Powell is for it, Janet Yellen's for it. Some people are cautious, but I don't know if this bet's going to work. But for the future of the world and the country, I hope it does.
Well, I think it's a bet, though, that's worth taking, and you agree, James, because the alternative is to have more sluggishness and more COVID and more, and that is
more crime, more,
right.
Kids unadjusted, more spouse abuse,
right.
More. You can't imagine what's happening.
No.
Pain is happening to people in this country. Starvation, people, food insecurity. Look at what's going on in Texas now.
Yeah.
Which was inevitable to happen. So, no, that humanity has a big bet on this plan, and I'm on humanity's side of the bet.
Yeah.
But sometimes humanity doesn't win.
No, but let's hope for it this time. I think they got a better than 50-50 shot, but it is a gamble. Hey, let's talk a little bit about Joe Biden. I caught most of his town hall the other night. There was a little family emergency, so I was interrupting for a while.
Right.
But I came back and saw a lot. I thought he was very good. He's not inspiring in the sense of a Kennedy or of a Roosevelt, because that's not who he is. But he was great at that town hall. And it was for a simple reason, I think, James. He's authentic. He is really authentic. And I think a lot of people, the partisan divide notwithstanding, are looking for someone who's real. And I thought that was true, whether it was the empathy of that with that little girl. And I'll tell you what really impressed me. When this questioner got up and said, we have a lot of student debt. Would you please get behind forgiving $50,000 of student debt for everybody? And he said no. He leveled with her. And he said, we got to do something about, student debt reform, but our priorities ought to be on free community college, childhood education. It was an honest answer. It was the correct answer. And it really, I thought, showed what a really good president that he can be.
Yeah, a lot of times we always go, and I don't think it'd be anything else. But the one thing, and I give Biden 80% of the credit for this, obviously, but 18% has to come from his advisors. And what they have concluded, and Joe Biden has concluded, is the only thing that he can do is, well, be Joe Biden.
Right.
Which is that everybody wants to be an interventionist. Everybody wants to come into a great idea. Everybody says this is how we can pivot. This is, now we've established this, we can go to that. And they go, no. And so what you see there is the same guy that you meet on the Metro liner, when you're going from Washington to Philadelphia that, tears your ear off to get to Wilmington. Or it's the same guy that you covered in 1988 in Iowa. It's the same guy you covered in the Senate in the late 70s. I mean, that's the thing that the brilliant thing about him and his people is they're not brilliant. And that's exactly what is brilliant.
Right.
It's Usarian in Catch-22. They were brilliant because they were not brilliant.
Yeah, it's who he is. I'll tell you one quick story which you will appreciate. Our late dear friend Tim Russert was supposed to give the commencement speech at Wake Forest in 2009, and he tragically died. And I asked then Vice President Biden if he would do it, and he did it. And he went down, and I've been to a lot of commencement speeches, James, and a lot of times, speakers, cite Cardinal Newman, and they talk about famous people they've met or whatever have you, words of wisdom, what life is going to be like. Joe Biden just kind of said, hey, let me tell you what. I've been in your shoes. Let me tell you what it's like. And those students loved it. They loved him. And they loved him not, again, because there was any great, memorable, lofty rhetoric. It was because he's the real deal. He's him. He's himself. And I think that's going to carry him a long way.
I hope it does, because I don't think he can play anybody else, nor do I want him to. And I wish him. His success is not just the country's success; it's the world's success.
Yeah.
Because if this thing blows up in our faces, the consequences of it are going to be utterly unimaginable.
Can I offer just one warning, one red flag, if you will, I'm a little worried about, and that is going back to school, particularly elementary schools. There have been mixed signals that have come a little bit from this administration, from CDC. The Republicans are making, I think, a largely false charge that this is all pandering to the teachers' union. I wish they could be absolutely clear that elementary schools in the next, week or so will open, wherever possible, almost everywhere, and we'll have a crash program to get those teachers vaccinated. A little bit different for high school students, but we got to get those younger kids back in school, James.
So let me just give you and I know it doesn't work as one piece of anecdotal evidence, but as you know, we have a place in the Shenandoah Valley.
Right.
And the lady that helps keep it up is her last year as teaching in Virginia public schools. I think she's in Winchester City that she teaches, all right? She takes care of her dad, who's a retired Virginia State Trooper in his mid-80s, all right? So in order, obviously, she's got to complete the last year because, she wants a retirement the best, and she's a teacher and everything else. That's a hard call. In compound that times, I don't know how many times, and she probably has some comorbidities, but she's on her last year, takes care of an elderly parent, a retired state trooper, and, they do some in-room teaching. Now, I understand. But the consequences of the children of this are just awful. And it also, like everything else, the consequences of rich and affluent children is significantly less than it is for poor children. But I'm saying behind this debate is real human choices that people are making, and we should never forget that.
Well, we shouldn't, and you ought to make exceptions everywhere. But, the American Academy of Pediatrics and others have said, even for kids who are well off, particularly younger kids, this is a real problem, and there ought to be some way to do some channeling, some more of the vaccine priority to people who are elementary school teachers. I do think it's different for high schools.
Yeah, I do too. But I just, when I see these, like, people have a restaurant or a bar and they're trying to open, they don't know what to do. All right, first of all, you say, well, everybody has a point. Almost everybody in this argument has a point. The most extreme public health people have a point. The people that say we can't live like this anymore have a point. The people that say that we got to go back to in-person learning right away have a point. The people that say we can't do it yet, you have a point. Suppose it was just one of these times where everybody was kind of right, and you were just trying to pick the most kind of right decision you had at any given time.
You got to make a choice.
And the choice is a 51-49 thing. All right, is it worth exposing, Patty and her dad to the consequences of, children being, locked up and not having it? I don't know. I don't know the answer. I wish I was wise enough to know it, but I agree with everybody, and that's the problem here. Is I don't know who I agree with more than the other side, but it's just not. I mean, the anti-mask people are jackasses. All right, that's beyond stupid. But other than the kind of easy stuff that we deal with, it's really hard when you get to the granular level, because you're really making just gut-wrenching choices.
They're terrible choices, but I think not only for society's reasons and educational and cultural reasons, and the fact that so many of these kids, more than we ever will realize, are really suffering at home, not just being denied education. We got to get those young kids back. Maybe we go, and if a school has, one teacher for every 25 students, we exempt the patties, we keep paying them, and it's one student for 35, one teacher for 35 students.
Maybe, and you have to have the cutoff. Okay, so if you're 1 year away from retirement, okay, we can do that. What about if you're 5? What about, I don't know. But public policy is just so inherently difficult. All right?
And different states will do it different ways, and that'll create other
do it different ways. And I will get, and we'll fume at some states and praise other states. And really, I don't know what I'd do differently. It's just very difficult. I just hope these vaccines, continue to work and continue to get out there. That's all I could say. Because there's no good answers to any of this at all.
Yeah, I do too. Hey, James Carville, we've had terrific guests, really smart, with great accomplishment. Our guest today is at the very top tier with extraordinary achievements, every possible recognition in the entertainment field, a philanthropist, a political activist. We are two old guys in awe. I don't know if you call us groupies of the incomparable Jane Fonda. Wow, Jane, thanks for joining us.
What an intro. I'm kind of in awe of both of you too, Al. I've known you for a long, long time because you were often in Atlanta, right? Where I was married to Ted Turner and CNN, and Judy was CNN, and all good. And James, I have never met in person, and I'm terrified to be interviewed by him.
Oh, well,
just remember, I'm more terrified than you are, so we're just two terrified people here.
You are missed on mainstream media, James.
I'll be a little bit tonight.
Hey, Jane, we're going to make a deal, and that is that you are so deeply involved in policy and political issues. We really want to talk to you about all those, and we're going to. But afterwards, then, just let two stargazers talk to you a little bit about your career.
Okay, whatever. Sure.
Deal? All right, great. You were ecstatic that Biden and Harris were elected, as were so many of us. And I remember you wrote back then in your blog that the appointments really mattered. You didn't want to see a bunch of old white Wall Street guys or K Street lobbyists. After a month of Biden and Harris, how do you feel now?
I feel really good. I feel good. He is our first climate president. Who would have thought Joe Biden would be our first real climate president? I think he learned very important lessons from the Obama years that, especially now, it's true, compromise if you wait around for the other side that is so nuts now, you won't get anything done. So he is being Rooseveltian. He is stepping forward with the big, bold actions that are exactly what's needed now. And I'm just thrilled. I'm a little concerned about Deb Haaland. It is so important and so critical and so celebratory that Deb Haaland has been nominated for Secretary of Interior. I'm told that there's some opposition building, and I just want to shout out anything anybody that's listening can do to call your elected official to ask them to support this first Indigenous person, much less woman, to be a cabinet member, someone who really will know how to take care of our interior and our lands. I'm just thrilled.
Okay, listeners, you've heard all that. Jane, your passion is the climate. They've rejoined the Paris Treaty. They've issued some new regulations, giving you a sense of where they want to go. That really is, I mean, you're happy with all that. Is there anything more you want to see them do or anything you're worried about?
Yeah. You know, I'm glad that he has a way to get some of the really big things that he's doing through budget reconciliation. He can do it twice this year, and not have to worry about the Republicans. But the things that that can't go through that way, I'm worried about some of the weaker Democrats who don't understand what's at stake. I mean, those of us who are within voting age, who are alive now, the future of civilization is in our hands. And we have to step up and take responsibility for this, which means we have to fight with everything we have for phasing out of fossil fuels. Biden, he spoke out against and stop the Keystone XL pipeline. But you know what he didn't do yet?
What?
I don't think. He didn't at the same time say, and all the workers who have jobs working on the Keystone XL, we're going to take care of you. We're going to make sure that before you lose your fossil fuel jobs, that you are paid and trained to move into new jobs where you live, where you want to work, in the industry you want to work in. You should not suffer because we have to phase out fossil fuels. Why didn't Biden do that?
Well, you're right. A big infrastructure bill would do that.
Yes, and now he has Line 3, the Enbridge Line 3, that's like Keystone XL. It's bringing that horrible Canadian tar sands oil that's heavy. It sinks to the bottom of water and it can't be cleaned. They're putting pipelines. They want to put them under the headwaters of the Mississippi River, under Lake Superior. This is a catastrophe. They're doing it right now. The militarized police are up there in northern Minnesota. We have to stop that. And we have to push the Thrive agenda. We have to make sure that passes both through budget reconciliation and then on the floor of the Senate. Okay, James Carville?
So when I look at your life, I mean, there are two things that obviously stick out. Is one, you're, a huge in entertainment, but you're a huge activist. And I want to talk to you a little bit about activism. Yeah. And there are millions, tens of millions of young people around this country that really want to be involved and they want to be activists. Over your life, what can you look back and tell somebody like my daughter who's 25, who's itching to be part of political activism, but other friends or people just all around this country of every stripe? What counsel would you give them, having led this remarkable life of political activism and being on the front lines?
I think the first thing that is important for people to know is that individually we can do very little. I mean, in 2019, I had moved to drive an electric car, gotten rid of single-use plastics, almost have eliminated meat from my diet, all the things that individuals can do. But that's the on-ramp. That's a starting place, not the ending place, because this is a collective crisis that requires a collective solution. Even if all of us did all the right things, we can't scale it up fast enough for it to matter. We have to listen to what the scientists are saying. So for young people, I would say join an organization. Make sure it doesn't have all white men on the board of directors. Make sure that it's an organization brave enough to stand up to fossil fuels, and work with an organization, Sunrise, Extinction Rebellion, Fridays for Future. There are so many wonderful organizations for younger people. And there's Fire Drill Fridays. You can follow us. You check out on Friday, every Friday at 11 o'clock Pacific time, 2 o'clock East Coast time. We come on and I use my celebrity to bring on frontline people who really know because they're living the current climate crisis in the United States. Well, I have actually people who join us from Australia and Africa and all over the place. It's kind of great. Do you know that we had 9 million people following us in 2020 across all platforms? And we've had over 400,000 people so far in 2020. What is this, 21? I can't believe I was born in 1937. Wow. I was born at the tail end of the original New Deal. It's
I don't believe it either.
Old because you really can see what's happening.
So I teach a course at LSU. Of course, we're at ground zero of climate. So, and I just don't allow climate denialism or skepticism. In Baton Rouge.
Oh my God! You're in Louisiana.
Southern
You're in the
Louisiana State.
Yeah, we're at the center, and I teach a course in communications, and the title of my course is "The Use of Emotion in Major Political and Social Movements." The climate movement is the only major movement that I know that does not have a song, it does not have a symbol, it does not have a bumper sticker. It eschews art. Why can't I put a bumper sticker on my pickup truck that says I am terrified about this and communicate with other people? Why don't we have a meeting, we sing a song? I mean, nefarious purposes have songs. Climate communications refuses to engage emotion. And I think, honestly, I think that's a huge hole in what we're doing. We're just trying to appeal to reason when, in fact, you got to have emotion combined with reason. And don't you think we need a song? Don't we need a bumper sticker? Don't we need a flag? Don't we need something?
Well, there's actually lots of them. But each organization has one. I think time is so much of the essence. There is such urgency that I don't think anybody has really thought much about it. I mean, the wonderful artist, the street artist, Shepard Fairey, has done posters for us. And we're using those. I mean, it's a little hard when we can't go out in person and paste them on walls and windows. But we're going to be doing that as soon as we can, as soon as we're safe to go outside. But, I agree with you. I mean, the problem is, James, that the emotion connected to the climate crisis is fear. And the scientists say, if you scare people to death, which we could do, it's that terrifying. It'll petrify them. It'll keep them from moving. You go numb after a while. So I guess the joy is imagining what will happen when the Thrive agenda under President Biden becomes a reality, because for the first time in so many decades, certainly since Reagan in the 80s, we will have a society where people are paid decent wages, where they don't live in constant anxiety, where women and men can go to work by the tens of millions because there's good childcare and elder care. We're remaking our country so that it can withstand the extreme weather events that are coming on, where oil workers, instead of oil pipelines, are putting in pipelines to bring clean water to Detroit and to Louisiana. We clean up Cancer Alley. We save all those parishes in southern Louisiana from the terrible cloud of toxic pollution that floats in the water and in the air over southern Louisiana, where all those refineries are. Joy about the future that we're fighting for. That's one thing that I think we need to do a better job. Give people the vision of what we're fighting for.
Yeah, Jane, let me ask you a question about your dad, Henry Fonda. Our good mutual friend, George Stevens, says he's one of the greatest actors of all times. You had a complicated relationship growing up, but his last film, The Marvelous On Golden Pond with You, was said to parallel that story, including the great love. Tell us about Henry Fonda, your relationship in that movie.
Well, Well, it was one of the great joys of my life to be able to co-produce a movie that co-starred my father and that brought him an Oscar. To be able to work with him in a role that so paralleled our personal relationship. But, you know, he was who he was. When I was having a lot of trouble with the scene where I say to him, I want to be your friend, where I walk out on the water and touch his arm. We don't have time for me to go into the whole story, but, you know, it was a difficult scene. And I asked him if I could have dinner with him that night. And he said, yeah. So I went over there, and the first thing I said to him, I told him the problems that I had with the scene. And I said, does that ever happen to you, Dad? No. No. You know, he just didn't know how to, I don't know. You know, I love him so much. He is with me all the time. And you know, if Prozac had existed then, our lives would have been so different. You know, he suffered, first of all, Midwest, Omaha, Nebraska, at that particular time, he was a product of his generation and his geography and undiagnosed depression. But, you know, when you get older, you spend a lot of time thinking about your relationships and how you could have done things differently. And I just love thinking about him and thinking about all the things that he gave me. You know, when I was writing my memoirs, I just happened to be in the first part where I was writing about my father. I got a call from Martin Luther King's daughter, Yolanda. I don't remember why she called, but I said to her, Yolanda, when you were a little girl, did your father bounce you on his knee and kind of talk to you about life and how to be and about values? And she said, no, he never did. I said, yeah, my dad didn't either. But you know what? You had his sermons and I had my father's movies, Grapes of Wrath, 12 Angry Men, The Wrong Man, Oxbow Incident. These are the movies that taught me values. And I will be forever grateful to him. Okay, so you asked me a personal question. So, James, I've always wanted to ask you this question. Are you and Mary still married?
I think we are as of 5 minutes ago, 15 minutes away.
How do you
never know.
A long-term marriage when you have such different politics? I don't understand.
It's like anything else. Sometimes it goes better than other times. But we've been together since January the 8th of 1991. We've been married since Thanksgiving of 1993. And I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, I would describe myself as a happy married person, and my youngest daughter's here with us, and so it's worked out in spite of a lot of difficulty. But a lot of people are married and they have one of their spouses has gambling problems or has substance addiction.
Yeah, I've been there.
Or depression, or there's any number of things that people have to overcome, and political differences is probably not in the top 5.
Wow.
But,
see, I wouldn't be able to.
And a lot of people, a lot of people couldn't be married to me, and a lot of people couldn't be married to Mary, and that's okay too. It sort of happens on, but
yeah.
I don't know if it's how much of an achievement.
It's a heck of an achievement.
I want to go back.
Can I just I want to tell Jane one story about her dad and quickly go to her. I met your dad only one time. Ab Mikva took us to the opening of First Monday in October, a play he did in Washington. And Judy and I were there. Judy was covering the White House. I had covered prime ministers, presidents, and talked to them. We all, you're supposed to act like you're blasé. The next morning, both of us got up and called our mothers to say, guess who we had dinner with last night? And they were impressed. Anyway, James, I interrupted you.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to go back because I'm really, but you and I share this sort of climate thing, maybe from a little bit different perspective. And I want to recommend a book to you. And it's called Bury the Chain. It's by a man named Adam Hochschild. He's a delightful academic at Berkeley. And it's a book on the British anti-slave trade movement. But what's really compelling about it is the way that they used emotion. Amazing Grace is probably the most famous and best song in the English language. that came out of the British anti-slave trade movement. They used water for China. They used graphics. They really used emotion. And I teach that to my young people, that if you want to be a communicator, you have to, emotion and passion has to be central to your form of communications. And you're a very big part of climate. You're very passionate about it. You're very effective. And I think, and the problem is we maybe have too many. We need a song. I live in South Louisiana. We're a very mournful place. We're losing land, a football field, I don't know, every 3 days or something. And we're the best at writing, good emotional songs. And we have nothing. We have nothing. We have no emotion. So I want to make this pitch, and you will love this book. You will love this story, and you will love how it started with a bunch of Quakers and how they really came and used emotion to bring about, which was actually the fall of the entire slave business, not just the business slave trade. Bury the chain. Adam Hochschild. I couldn't recommend any book higher to any communicator.
Alan Hochschild wrote a great book.
That's his wife,
Strangers
Arlie.
in Their Own Land. About
Arlie, that's his wife.
I know,
Yeah.
I know. And
I had her at my class at Tulane.
I know, and that was a great
Yes, they're they're older couple. They live in Berkeley. They're just totally delightful people. And her husband, Adam, wrote this book, and I couldn't recommend it highly enough.
Thank you. I will definitely read it. Are you familiar with the Yale Project on Climate Change Communication?
I am. I spoke to a bunch of people at Yale on it, and
yeah, because I follow their lead when they say, this is how we need to be talking about climate, and this is how Americans feel about it. They do the best research on climate, including how to communicate the messages.
Well, I'll look deep into it, but I did a seminar. Actually was conducted. One of the people in it, and I can't think of her name, but she. Anyway, it was a delightful thing, but I still felt the communications part of, and I had Bill McKibben in my class. I think we need a song.
All right.
Okay.
That's Jane Fonda's mandate is to find a song, and then when we're going to ask her when she finds a song to come back and sing it for us. So we can do a twofer here.
Absolutely.
Jane,
maybe I'll get Jackson.
You've been incredibly.
I
got one final question.
I want to close with a story.
James. Wait a minute.
Okay.
Go ahead, James, then I'll close.
So, I think it was your brother that played in Easy Rider. All right. Remember where he was, assassinated in Louisiana? That spot was a half a mile from where two of my sisters were born, in a place called Morganza, Louisiana, which is actually where the spillway is. But I just said, you know what? If you go deep enough, you find a connection between anything. And so that's my connection with your family is.
Wow.
Between my brother and your
Jane, tell us, you've been incredibly generous with your time. Tell us what's ahead for Jane Fonda. You've written how happy you are, content you are right now. You have Frankie and Grace. You're very involved.
Well, activism is the best antidote.
You're going to say
activism is the best antidote to despair.
Good.
Of course. Yeah. In fact, as soon as I finish doing my creative work, I'm going to come to Louisiana and hold rallies there.
We would love to have you.
And maybe I'll
come by.
And I'll
don't
have
forget Washington, because you've been really good here too.
Nah, but we are really we're getting hammered. I mean, we're getting slaughtered. I mean, 5 storms in 1 year. Oh, yeah. I mean, there's too much water coming our way, and it's tragic. It is very tragic. And if you can come, anybody can come and draw attention to this. It's great. We're losing land left and right.
Nobody better at that.
Thank you.
Listen, let me ask your advice, James. Where is the best place to hold a rally that will call attention to the hot spots?
Probably I would say in a metropolitan area, but if we could go, there's 1,000 places we could go and show the real effect that climate's having on real lives. I mean, we're having to move people out.
Yeah.
Subsidence and sea level rise is just killing us. It's just you can't.
the
Oh
island.
yes, but it would not be very difficult at all to find any number of places that would illustrate this. And let me assure you too, we would have plenty jerks coming out of the woodwork, drawing attention to us, which would be great.
Useful jerk.
It would be great. Yeah.
I'm used to jerk.
I am too.
Well,
I live amongst a lot of them.
You have been incredibly
Well, that's
generous with your time, and I would just add to George Stevens' comment, there are two Fondas who are among the greatest actors of all times. Jane Fonda, this has really been a thrill for us. I can't tell you how much we've enjoyed it. Be safe, and I hope we'll both see you soon.
I hope so too, Al. Thank you very much, Al. Thank you.
It was a huge honor. Thank you.
Hey, James, at any age, something we think about, and no matter your goals, protein is critical. And it's especially important to get the protein powder that's right for your health, vision, and with Gainful Protein, that's exactly what you get. Gainful personalizes your protein for you based on your body type, diet, fitness habits, and goals after a short, fun online quiz. Gainful even comes with a one-on-one access to your own registered dietitian to get where you want to be. It's an incredible bonus, and it gives you the tools to make the most of Gainful. No other protein does.
Yeah, Al, I've this August the 1st will be 40 years since I took up jogging or running or whatever you call it, and I've probably done it on average of 350 days a year. And let me tell you, when you're doing that in South Louisiana, as I've done, hundreds of thousands of times, you're going to lose a lot of stuff in your body. And this is a very convenient, good-tasting way to replenish a lot of that. And I'm being a little bit extreme, and that's being a run in July in South Louisiana, but that applies to anything.
In the South Louisiana heat, or you could try it in the Washington winter probably too, James. Right.
Either way, you're gonna deplete things. I'm just a little more of an extreme athlete than most people because of the way I live in the climate. But I'm very excited about this product. I really am.
Yeah, me too. Here's my favorite part, James. Gainful Protein is never repetitive, and it tastes so good, as you just noted, thanks to their single-serving flavor boost to add to your Gainful Protein. They include rich chocolate, cookies and cream, Madagascar vanilla, chocolate peanut butter, okay, that's me, and always a favorite, strawberry cream and cafe mocha. You can customize each shake, or you can add its unflavored protein straight to your smoothies and recipes. And also, with a Gainful subscription, you receive monthly shipments straight to your door, and with the ability to easily update your order, formula, and flavors. Your fitness and nutrition journey is one of a kind, so the products you use should be also. With personalized nutrition and support, Gainful makes sure you're making progress towards your health and fitness goals every day. Now, right now, James, I feel like Ed McMahon, but it's true. Right now, we have a special offer for our listeners. Get $15 off your first month of personalized protein powder when you go to Gainful.com/warroom. That's Gainful.com/warroom. It's all one word. Trust me, you're going to love having personalized protein powder from Gainful. It's a game changer. And again, that's Gainful.com/warroom to get $15 off your first month or so, or go to the link in our show notes.
Well, great. You can do some good. You can save some dough. All right. Way to go.
Hey, James, again, a whole bunch of great questions from around the country and even the globe. And the first one comes from Jen. And Jen, I'm going to give you a pass this week because you didn't tell us where you're from, but it's a good question. So we're going to read it, but next time tell us where you're from. She really liked Doug Jones. She thought he was fantastic, edifying, and interesting. And I think between the lines, she's waiting for one of us to, drop out one week so Doug can come back. But she just says how great he was. She also has a question, and that is, there are a lot of strong women in the Democratic Party that we don't talk about. And she mentions Alyssa Slotkin, Mikey Sherrill, Katie Porter. How do we elevate them?
Well, first of all, we talk about thank you, and I agree with you on Senator Jones. Actually, strong women are pretty front and center in the Democratic Party. I mean, we do talk about Nancy Pelosi. I'm sorry, people talk about AOC and Maxine.
Yeah.
All right. And Jane Fonda mentioned Deb Haaland, who my daughter introduced at a thing at my house when I wasn't asked. So actually, Deb Haaland has been to my house in New Orleans, which I'm proud to say. But what we found, and what about this Stacy from the Virgin Islands?
Stacy Plaskett, who I will tell you has been to our house, courtesy of my wife. Right. And she's as awesome in person as she was during those hearings. She's a real star.
Oh God! I mean, I understand, but I think that we nominated a woman for a presidential candidate in 2016. I dare to mention that, but
got one as vice president.
So I understand, but I think the party is doing. You don't want to say that anything is like good in this time, but I think we're doing a relatively good job of putting a lot of really talented women front and center in the Democratic Party. I really do.
I agree, and there are a lot. There are an awful lot.
Right.
And the next one is from Derek in Edmonton, Alberta. This is interesting.
But it's cold there.
It is, man, I'll tell you. But it's pretty cold here too. But this is coming from Canada. It's interesting. He said he's heard a lot of talk about the importance of the $15 minimum wage. What I haven't heard so much is why it's so important to a real relatable way for families. First of all, economists for years, even a lot of liberal economists, said the minimum wage costs jobs. And then a great economist named Alan Kruger, who was chairman later of Obama's Council of Economic Advisors, did a really in-depth study that said, no, that ain't so. The trade-off sometimes is favorable. Same reason Henry Ford paid his auto workers a lot more so they could afford to buy a Model T. And I think right now at $15 an hour, James, if you work 35 hours a week, you're going to take home $26,000 a year. There ain't very many places, whether you're single, whether you're married, whether you have 2 or 3 kids, you can live on that. I don't think it's going to happen now, but they ought to at least take a step. Get it up to 11 in a year or two, and the idea of going to 15 in 3 or 4. Not enough, but they ought to be done. And by the way, I think an even better anti-poverty program is the Earned Income Tax Credit.
Yeah, look, on the minimum wage, the one thing that we don't realize is there are a lot of people who make more than the minimum wage whose pay is based on the minimum wage. Right. So just take a firm that a company out that has, I think, is a good company, is Costco. Maybe the minimum wage is $10.25 an hour. Well, they pay their people $13.50. So if you raise it to $15 an hour, then they might pay their people $17.50, right? It's not just the people that get the minimum wage. It also raises it. The CBO says you might cost some jobs, but it will definitely lift more people out of poverty. And I think that's the important thing is that what we're trying to do as a society is get as many people above the poverty line that we possibly can.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that the minimum wage is very effective at. And I think the research will bear it out. You're right. Alan Kruger was a great economist. He was a great guy.
He really was.
He died, tragically at too young an age.
But no, he was in that study, which I think was like 30, 40 years ago, is still a seminal study. James, this next question comes from Joseph in New Orleans. I don't think it's intended for me, so I'm going to read it. Would thoughts about the spontaneous development of house floats that we have seen in New Orleans occur to you? For me, these actions by the people in the community finally made me understand you can't kill the culture of New Orleans. You think that was maybe intended for you?
Yeah, that is the one thing, and Joe, I said, what people in New Orleans, what I would say to someone like you, or whatever, said, you live in Washington, in Northwest Washington, you live in Los Angeles, and you have a great quality of life. I mean, you got world-class museums, particularly in Los Angeles. You got climate. In Washington, you have Rock Creek Park. You got airports. In the quality of life in Washington, I'm in metropolitan Washington right now, is quite good. In New Orleans, we never speak of our quality of life. We only speak of our way of life. And I always say, I would not, give up 1 inch of my way of life. I wouldn't take 100 yards on quality of life, because we have humidity, we have potholes, we have poverty, we have hurricanes, we have crime, but God damn it, we lead a good life. And Mardi Gras and people are just not. I love Mardi Gras in ways that no one can understand because it's just a futile and stupid cultural gesture. And it is just the way that we just like give a finger to the rest of the world. And the fact, and they're not going to let it die. The Mardi Gras, the COVID can kill a lot of shit. The one thing it's not going to kill, it can kill big box retailers, it can kill restaurants, it can kill hotel changes. There's no way that COVID could ever kill fucking Mardi Gras. I promise you that. That will be the cockroach that will survive when everything else is gone and the whole planet has been ravaged by this pandemic of unimaginable thing. Somebody will come up with a carnival costume. It'll be the last thing to go.
I'll just say to that, amen, Joseph. Here, Rebecca and Ann Arbor. I like this. She says, one day without advance notice, should Nancy Pelosi hand out citizenship tests that immigrants must pass to every member of the House and then post their grades? You know, Rebecca, I want to make one amendment. I really kind of like the idea. I want the Senate to do it too, and then I want us to go and everyone to see what grade Tommy Tuberville, the new senator from Alabama, gets.
I wish they would get, what's that thing they give the NFL play, the Wonderlic test or something like that. Yeah. And he was like a head football coach. I love for Tommy to get the Wonderlic. He's so, let's say, I don't want to say because I don't know what somebody can do. How stupid he is, he says the stupidest things that you can imagine. If saying stupid things makes you stupid, he is really one stupid man. Because he says the stupidest things that you can imagine.
You think he could beat Ron Johnson in a stupid contest?
Yeah, and the reason is that I think Ron Johnson is just governed by just being greedy and ambitious and just says stupid things because it feeds his ambition and it feeds whatever he thinks he is.
Yep.
I think Tommy Tuberville might be just genuinely fucking dumb.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there might be the underlying convention. The man's just not, he's just not very smart. But that's just my view from afar. Maybe there are compelling reasons for his stupidity, but I don't think so. I think it's just genuine. I think like Joe Biden. I think Tommy Tuberville is a. Joe Biden is a genuinely empathetic man. I think Tommy Tuberville is a genuinely stupid man. I really do.
James, I was sick that Doug Jones lost that race because he is such a valuable public citizen. And the only consolation is that Tommy's going to give us some laughs in the next couple of years.
You take what you get.
Yeah, you do. Here's one from Jack from Antwerp, from Belgium, who said, Trump, Tillerson, and Pompeo made a mockery of the State Department. How's Biden going to reform it, and what steps should he take to reset America's relationship with Europe? And James, I got to tell you though, I was impressed. Let me just say, I was impressed by Belgium, but then at the very end, he says, "Roll, damn tide, roll." So that worries me a little bit.
So my great grandmother Octavia Duhon was Belgium. Her dad went over to a commercial colony like in Guatemala, El Salvador, and they ended up in New Orleans. So. My friend from Antwerp, I definitely have Belgian origins, the French Belgian, but as I said, my grandmother was Octavia Duhon, and I wanted to call my oldest daughter Octavia. And Ann Devereaux here, remember the great Washington Post reporter,
sure
says, if you do that, James, I'll kill you. She didn't like the name Octavia, but anyway, that's my story about that. So what about the State Department, Al? You covered that for a long time.
Yeah, I look, they did, and they totally debased the foreign. The Foreign Service is not a bunch of striped pants idealists. They're people who've worked in embassies, who worked under threat, who understand the world. Some of the greatest people I've ever known have come out of that Foreign Service. And first of all, they have to restore the respect and the dignity of that. I have every reason to believe, I'm certain, as a matter of fact, that Tony Blinken will do that. And James, like anything that has been really not demolished, but just devastated over the last 4 years, it ain't going to happen overnight. but I think they're going to do it. And Jack, part of that is to reset, as you say, America's relationships with Europe. They're important allies. We can disagree with them sometime, but you can't go it alone. So,
no, and if you don't think that they're smart, try to take their exam.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
If
you think they're just a bunch of bureaucratic deep state ne'er-do-wells, okay, take the exam.
You don't think Tommy Tuberville would pass that exam?
Tommy Carville couldn't pass gas.
All right, here's a final one that we both can take up because I think it's short and easy. What was the reason that former President Trump chose to put all his eggs in the Operation Warp Speed basket and not into fighting the pandemic? I'll give you my simple answer, because he didn't give a shit about anything but himself, and that's why he was into denial and he lied. And the only reason they put money into Warp Speed was because he thought he could get some kind of big announcement before the election.
I think when the history is written, this is I think, so I'm going to be careful. This is just my opinion. I'm not saying it happened, but I think when they find out somebody, like anything else that Trump ever did, either he or somebody close to him made money off of Warp Speed, because that's the only thing that motivates him.
Yep.
And, history will see if I'm right or wrong, but that's my suspicion, that he or Jared or somebody around that operation got a cut of this thing, because he doesn't do anything without his cut.
No, that's for sure. I should have said that question came from Nan from Northern California. And Nan, I'm glad you told us you're from Northern California, but next time tell us where in Northern California. And Jen, you better write again and tell us where you're from.
Eureka. That is my ultimate Northern California town.
I'll tell you, it is beautiful up there. It really is.
Ooh, man.
I'll tell you that. Okay, guys, keep those cards and letters coming. Today, we're welcoming back one of our favorite sponsors, IPVANISH. Now, James, IPVANISH is a virtual private network, a VPN for short. A VPN is a super important tool that helps you safely browse the internet. You can use a VPN on your computers, tablets, phones, even things like your Fire Stick when you're streaming media. When you use a VPN, all your data is encrypted. What you're reading, what you're searching, what you're watching, whatever it is you're doing. Now, IPVANISH is just $3.49 a month. Just $3.49 a month, or $27.99 a year. You can help protect your online privacy and security. Here's everything you get with IPVANISH. Anonymous IP addresses. This means your personal IP address can't be tracked by anyone on the web. Circumvent any online censorship. IPVANISH has more than 1,500 servers in 70-plus locations. And get protection when using public Wi-Fi. Remember, with IPVANISH, all your data is encrypted, so no one can snoop on what you're doing, James.
Yeah, I agree. Look, let's face it, there are not many James Carvilles in this world. So I'm a person that when I do searches, I would be glad to share them publicly with anybody. And if anybody believes that, they're really stupid, and I don't think anybody does. But if you're like me and you have a eclectic taste in websites that you search, and like me, you like to travel a little bit, and you'd like to keep some things to yourself in your old age, this is one hell of a product. It's a hell of a product. You share a few little picadillos in life, this might be a good idea.
Yeah, you go to ipvanish.com/warroom. That's all one word to claim your 65% savings. They have plans starting, as I said, at $3.49 a month or $27.99 a year. This is the time to sign up. With our discount and their current promotional offerings, you can get a VPN for 65% off their usual offering. IPVanish is the best of the best, even rated 4.7 out of 5 on Trustpilot, and that's with more than 6,000 reviews. Show these guys some love. Remember, it's ipvanish.com/warroom to get the deal and start protecting yourself online, or look for the link in our show notes.
Yeah, that's a good point. 6,000 reviews is a lot. Sometimes you get these things and, 98% like, and it's,
right.
20 people. I mean, this has the validity of a pretty substantial number of people saying it's a hell of a product, which makes me feel really good about it.
James, my outrage, I almost feel guilty. It's about, a little bit like taking candy from a baby, but little Lindsey Graham, or as Chris Buckley calls him, Squiggly Biscuit, he's at it again. First post-impeachment, he said, this is still Donald Trump's party. Trump trashes Mitch. He said, I like Rich. Mitch too. I like them both. He doesn't. Before either take it to the bank, they should remember that Lindsey was John McCain's wingman until the Arizona icon incurred the wrath of Donald Trump. So don't count on little Lindsey. But the thing that really got me was, as he searches for a new commander, Squiggly Biscuit said, if the GOP takes back the House in next Congress, we might impeach Kamala Harris. And unfortunately, as a quote machine, he'll say anything. He's irresistible for cable news and Sunday talk shows. I am through with Squiggly, James. I'll stick with Kate McKinnon.
Yeah, I will too. So, as you know, for the last 3 weeks, I've been hard on the New York Times, I think justifiably. So I want to be kind to the New York Times. And for my outrage, I want to read directly from a piece in the New York Times by a journalist by the name of Dan Barry. All right?
Yep.
And I'm reading directly. The Texas doctor had 6 hours. Now that a vial of COVID-19 vaccine had been opened on this late December night, he had to find 10 eligible people for its remaining doses before the precious medicine expired in 6 hours. Scrambling, the doctor made house calls and directed people to his home outside Houston. Some were acquaintances, others strangers, a bedbound octogenarian, a woman in her 80s with dementia, a mother with a child who uses a ventilator. After midnight, with just minutes before the vaccine became unusable, the doctor, Hassan Gokal, gave the last dose to his wife, who has pulmonary disease that leads to short of breath. For his actions, Dr. Gokal, a Gokal, I'm sorry if I mispronounced it, but apologize, Doc, was fired from his government job and in charge of stealing 10 vaccine doses worth a total of $135. A shun-worthy misdemeanor that sent his name and mugshot rocketing around the globe. What? I assume that this story was edited, was checked out. I don't know Mr. Barry. I'm sure he's a reputable man. What the hell is this? What? Dr. Gokal, 48, an immigrant from Pakistan, is a boy, earned a medical degree from SUNY Upstate Medical University in Syracuse. His volunteer work included rebuilding homes and providing medical care after Hurricane Harvey in 2017. Now, what are we doing?
What job was he fired from, James? Does it say?
He was a head of a hospital in metropolitan Houston.
Well, we'll get the name of that hospital. It's not this week, next week, and we'll ask everyone to write that hospital and ask what the hell this is. And
I'm reading right out of the story in the Times. And I mean, if there's a answer to this story that I'm unaware of, but I haven't seen a retraction, a clarification, or anything. What is wrong with people? I mean, there's got to be something more here than we know, because if what we know is what the fact is, he was the. I mean, if you go, the deeper you go into it, they'll give you another paragraph. Fortunately, he said the Harris County Public Health Department recruited him in April to become the medical director for its COVID response team. The job paid less, but he was eager to protect his wife by limiting his exposure to the coronavirus in emergency rooms. There got to be something more to this story. It just can't be what it is.
Let's check it and let's find out, it was Harris County, what hospital it was, what official did it, who did it, and let's not drop, or let's not let this one drop.
All right, that's this one. All right, and it's,
I agree with you. It sounds,
you can look it up.
Awful.
Dan Barry, published February 10th, updated February 12th.
Okay, we got it. Hey, thanks for listening to Politics War Room with James Carville, and I'm Al Hunt. Don't forget to send your questions for us by email to politicswarroom@gmail.com or tweet them for next week's show @Politicon. And remember to check out the links to our sponsors in the show notes. We really thank you for supporting them. It's what makes this podcast happen. So to keep up with us every week, subscribe to Politics War Room on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen. Please rate the show with a 5-star review. We'll be back next week with another show as we continue our War Room 2021 planning.